Okay.
Thanks. Sure. And then there's a whiteboard part. Goldman Sachs. Yeah. You see that?
Hello.
Is there any way these lights can be a little less?
Okay. Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to an amazing panel today. I'm Rilwan Miran. I'm the head of ASA's Impact Fund. ASA's Impact Fund is a $150 million allocation focused on investing in funds as well as making direct investments into private companies. We focus on investing in 3 key areas: workforce development, career-focused education, and intentional post-secondary pathways. We stood up the program in April 2022, and in 3 years we've made investments that are exceeding $74 million. We've made investments in 10 funds and 11 direct investments into companies. Today, we are at an immense inflection point as middle and high school students are challenged with an array of employment opportunities. Investing in dynamic, quality, and reliable education to career opportunities is the best investment we can make for families, businesses, and communities for a better future. However, US venture funding in education technology companies has dropped precipitously since the pandemic. On the flip side, solution providers today are offering some of the most innovative solutions integrating AI, VR, and XR in the hope of scaling career-based learning with technology. But as they're offering new technologies, they're increasingly facing barriers of adoption. With that, let's dive right in. I would like each of our panelists to introduce themselves and also tell us what their firms are working on in addressing career-connected learning solutions. Mark, we're going to start with you.
Thanks for having us. Good morning, everybody. New Markets Venture Partners is a 24-year-old venture fund. We're in our 5th fund, focusing on high-efficacy interventions that help people move from the next level. So 3rd grade literacy, 6th grade math, career and college ready in high school graduation, alternative pathways, high-stakes credential, or getting through universities with low debt, extra credentials. And then we do some work in the workforce around skills-based hiring and those sorts of things. The career focus for us has recently begun to integrate every single thing we do. So there's some direct things that I would say would be applicable, like a boot camp or a skills-based hiring platform for enterprise, different sort of pathway programs that we invest in. But what's interesting is things like our dropout recovery and credit recovery. The school districts now are demanding career and college pathways for their students as part of this intervention. And we'll talk about challenges, but I'll leave it at that. It's now part of every intervention that we're investing in, kind of like AI is part of everything. So some are career and college first, and even if it's not career and college first, increasingly there needs to be a solution in that regard.
Thank you, Mark. Oliver?
Hi, everyone. I'm Oliver. I'm one of the co-founders of SpringPod. So we recently joined ASA and flipped to a US company in October of last year. Our mission is quite simple. We aim to give every young person access to meaningful work-based learning solutions. We do that virtually. And the reason for it is we believe students in high school need to access experiences to help them make informed and confident decisions about their career paths. We've had over 1 million students in the UK go through our programs with the likes of Amazon, Barclays, Siemens, and Airbus. And we're really excited to launch in the US to try and tackle the same gap that there is here, that there is in the UK.
Matthew?
My name is Matt Shosey. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CareerView XR. And at CareerView XR, we've created a library of immersive media experiences that are all filmed in the real world using virtual reality cameras. And then we create web-based tours that can be accessed on any device. So VR headsets are optional. These can be accessed on desktop, tablet, and mobile, interactive touch panel in the classroom, bringing real-world job sites into the classroom to give students an authentic glimpse inside of what a day in the life of these different careers are. Our goal is to create broad level awareness for students about what these careers are so that they can be more effective and confident in the decisions about the pathways that they want to go down.
Wei?
Hi, everyone. My name is Wei Chu. I was here 16 years ago when it was about 40 people, so and actually it took a bit of a gap, so it's really exciting to see all the interest around future of work in ed tech. So Reach Capital, we have about 600, is an early stage venture fund. We have about 600 million under management. We are investing out of Fund 4. It's a $215 million fund. We support entrepreneurs at primarily the seed and Series A stage. We invest across what we call the intersection of learning, work, and health. Our roots was definitely in the K-12 and higher ed space in early Fund 1, and we've definitely evolved that thesis. And as I think about career readiness, we think about it in terms of the skills needed from early childhood to lifelong learning. And in this current AI environment, I think what is so exciting is that we are all learning to learn and work again, and we're all in the same boat. And so I'm excited to dive into what that looks like as well going forward.
Thank you, Wei. When you think about all these innovative solutions, AI, XR, and VR, what are some of the challenges in adoption, right? These are technologies that are going to change the way we learn and think. But what's holding us back? Mark.
I think I would answer that from the kind of state, school district, and employer level. Inside the school districts, I think the prioritization is still lacking. Even in school districts which is most school districts, the majority of the kids are not necessarily college bound, the focus of the curriculum is college focused. So getting some airtime for vocational experiences is really challenging inside these classrooms where the curriculum is highly dedicated to, I don't know if calculus should replace having some job skills, but that's currently what's happening. So we have some legislators fighting for some room in the curriculum for more vocational ed, but it's not very ubiquitous. So when we see companies that are trying to fight for that time, it's a tough fight to get in the curriculum. On the state level, we've invested in some companies that try and put these, I'm an old guy, so I call them portals, right? Where they're these career portals. And unfortunately, I've heard them referred to as a $500,000 PR press release from a governor, right? So the governor's got a portal, we've solved our career in college thing, it's a 3-year contract, and then kind of the wind blows through it. Like, what's the real engagement? What's the real outcomes? Those have been challenging. And then at the employer level, again, we can talk long about this. There's been a movement from 400 corporate universities to 2,000 in the last 10 years, but they're still not leaning into talent pipeline engagement. So whether it's project-based learning with schools or apprenticeships or some sort of farm team work where they're leaning in and building this pipeline, I've not seen much scale. So I've seen challenges from the K-12 world, from the state world, and from the employer world to really get this moving, which we all recognize needs to happen.
Great. Oliver?
Yeah, I completely agree on the curriculum part. We see that day in, day out really is trying to work-based learning not being an initiative which is just co-curricular, but trying to be something that's actually embedded. And I think it comes back to the impact of it and actually being able to demonstrate the return on learning for the students and how that is better to other ways of delivering curriculum as well. So I think curriculum is definitely one part, but yeah, I think it's also around how do we get better at reporting on the impacts that those learners are actually having.
Great. Matt?
Well, for us in the VR space, some of the barriers to scale have been just access to hardware, accessibility of the content, affordability, which is why we've worked really hard to make sure that what we provide meets teachers and students where they're at with the devices they have in the classroom, and that it can be an entry point so that they can start seeing the value in these technologies. Once they see the value and they can build a small successful program, it's easier to build on that success than to try to implement a massive portal out of the gate, right, to Mark's point. And that's really kind of what we've been focusing on, and we've worked to help support those things by creating content that is not dependent on VR hardware, by creating professional development coursework that helps educators get familiar and comfortable with using the technology, and even working directly with industry partners. And well, we're based in North Dakota. We've got a big campaign, or I guess we're working with the North Dakota legislature right now on a public-private partnership that would help secure and really entrench the adoption that we've gotten in our state, and we're hoping to replicate that in other markets.
Great. Wei?
Yeah, I don't have much to add, and what I double down on your point around building trust around the technology. So, typically in K-12 and corporate, Mark covered the go-to-market challenges of decision-making and adoption. I have never probably been more excited in terms of, as I think about bottoms up, whether you're a student, you're a middle manager, you're right out of school, the ability to do work without being, I'll use venture as the data point, and I actually wrote a blog post this morning interviewing some high caliber interns, potential interns, but was completely appalled about how unresourceful they were in showing up for the interview. And I won't go into detail, but my point being is, in the K-12 context, the kids are running with the AI. The students are running, your own kids are running with it. I have 2 high schoolers. So for us, it's how do you build trust with the teachers and admins and show them the delight, the value in their flow of their work, not as an added tech. And I asked that question to all of you in terms of the teams you manage. The minute ChatGPT launched 3 years ago, we told our founders, it is a red flag if not every single one of your employees is using this daily, period. Playing with it, trying to up-level their work. And so I think the playing field is we are all in the same situation and learning what our role looks like in our own jobs. And I think it's both the challenge as well as kind of the optimist in me in being able to kind of leverage that now in terms of the skills we are looking for in terms of the next gen.
And I forgot to mention higher ed, in the framework. So schools that are getting it, right, like Western Governors, ASU, Southern New Hampshire, UMGC, they're growing. It's the only place enrollment's growing because they're helping people learn the skills that they need for careers. And then the other universities where you hear the college presidents say, we're not going to teach for a job skill because that changes, and we're going to, right? It's great for a few people who can have a nice residential humanities program, but most of the reason people go to school is to get a good job, and most of the students now are non-traditional and minority, right? All these words that used to represent the non-majority are now the majority, and I feel like universities haven't gotten the message except for some that are the ones that are working.
Thanks. Thanks, Mark. When you think about impact investing, we're always talking about outcomes. And when you think about career-focused technology, we'd love to hear from you guys what outcomes you're focused on and what tools you're using to track those outcomes. Mark.
So that question begs something we're really excited about, is what I would say is an assessment regime. John Katzman said to me, if you're competency-based education, everything becomes test prep, and he's the Princeton Review guy, so I can see that, and you don't want everything to be test prep. But we've had a few instances where there has been an industry-recognized credential that you could assess. And that's just an exciting sort of idea to me, these high-stakes credentials that are not necessarily BA, that can be more affordable, that can be shorter term, as the type of thing, right, that can be a measurable outcome that's not necessarily a BA graduation. So we have metrics around high school graduation. It's a good signal. College graduation is a good signal. But when we can have, I guess, credentials and assessments that represent real skills measurements, and then we've invested in some enterprises to help them figure this out inside the enterprise. What is a skill that you need, and how do you really measure it? And how do you make sure your staff has it? And if they don't, how do you upskill or hire to fill that in? These are big opportunities that I think are pretty exciting. And it ties to impact for us, right? So when we're investing in a company where these are the measurable outcomes, like a high school graduate, and we're paid for performance, the financial and the impact metrics come together, that's a really exciting thing for us. There's good jobs, there's quality jobs, both really good definitions that foundations are spending some time trying to measure. So we say good and quality as a goal, those sorts of things.
Oliver?
Yeah, I think it's interesting on the skills piece. I'm referring not really from from an investment point of view, but where I see a big gap is that students are being taught skills on a daily basis within in schools and within higher education, but it's actually helping them articulate what they've actually learned. So it's how do they know what skills that they are being taught, and how can they explain in context when they're in an interview with an employer or trying to secure their first job what skills are that they have and how where they're currently at in terms of competency level. I think that's where there's a big gap in terms of, in particular, from a careers education point of view, is really helping them identify those particular skills.
Just a quick follow-up, Oliver. I think you guys used a third party to verify outcomes, right? Maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we, from an outcomes perspective, we work very closely with our employer partners, not just from a talent attraction point of view, but also helping them understand what social impact that has driven. We use a third-party platform called GIST Impact, where basically we have calculated over the last year the work-based learning programs that students have been through on SpringPod has generated 130 million in social impact. So we use lots of tools like that, and that's actually quite a conservative figure when we look at it. That's on the basis of about 300,000 students that have gone through it. We've got actually a white paper which we can share if anyone is interested in that, but that's what we use as GIST Impact.
Thank you, Oliver. Matt?
So our visionary goal is, or outcome, is that every student has an opportunity to confidently pursue their dream job. But obviously, that's not a specific and measurable goal. So the way that we're working to walk back to that is asking students and teachers, are you aware of more career pathways? Are you feeling more confident about the CTE course that you've chosen as the next step in that pathway? And really figuring out what are those steps that tell us that the increased awareness, the increased career literacy that we're providing for these students is helping them make more effective decisions. One of the things that we're really excited about, and a project where we will be able to see some very measurable outcomes, is we had an opportunity to partner with Bismarck State College, who is our state's polytechnic institution, and we applied for a Disability Innovation Fund grants, which would, the premise of the project was to leverage the CareerView platform to create awareness for individuals with disabilities of careers in advanced manufacturing. We are just getting that project kicked off the ground. Year one will be finding opportunities where awareness is the primary barrier that is keeping someone with a disability who's very capable of working out of the workforce. It is a perceived barrier, not an actual one. So we're really excited to see how does awareness impact that. The next stage of that project is actually following those individuals and the assistive technology that they're using and creating new CareerView experiences that highlight that and highlight competitive integrated employment and successful adaptation of roles, so that a worker that normally would be unemployed or underemployed can now be gainfully employed in a great job. We really feel that awareness is a critically important missing factor, and we're doing what we can to figure out what measurable outcomes that looks like. Ultimately, though, it's more people enrolled, or more people employed who were not previously, and they're very satisfied with the work that they're doing.
Thank you, Matt. Wei?
Well, we measure outcome. We try to really be very context specific to the company. So what I'd say broadly is measurement around, I see thousands of future work companies a year, and career placement at scale and career mobility, and are probably the two driving factors that we would love to see in terms of an ideal investment. So you could look at kind of EdTech 1.0. Handshake brought the network of corporates to schools and access to jobs, right? That was an important tech-enabled platform to bring access. You know, we all, or I'll speak for us, we had a lot of learnings with the boot camps and reskilling around both career placement as well as financing. And I think there are a lot of lessons learned as we look forward. Now, I'll use one example. I just met with one of our companies, Major League Hacking. They have two forms of business models. They are one of the largest hackathon organizers across universities across this country. And so they have this massive talent pool, but they also have a very active fellowship program. And the big question I think we're all asking in our organizations of what entry-level skills look like, they're measuring it from a technology standpoint. So they're placing entry level into Meta and Google and really helping define the industry of what are we assessing now, what does that skill set look like? And so I'm super excited for them to be on the forefront of having incredible employer partners to drive what that means, to be on the ground at universities to help hopefully drive curriculum and coursework around it. But it's a deeply moving target because even both at my firm and all our, if you look on the business side, all the investment banks and consulting firms have their analyst classes. So everyone right now, there's this period of kind of resetting what are the skills we're going to be looking to demand from this next generation workforce.
Thank you, Wei. When you think about the investor side, Wei and Mark, I'd love to hear what opportunities you guys are seeing on the career-focused education side. Mark, we'll start with you.
We're seeing a lot of exploration tools. We're seeing a lot of alternative pathway credentials specifically around niches inside different industries. It's interesting, if you look historically, some of the easier things to credential and assess that are recognized inside of industry, like, let's say, nursing, right? A lot of those schools and credentials have been invested in, and they're big private equity plays that are 10, 20 years old. And then I think there's an opportunity for industry to start recognizing other pathways where you can get a clear promotion with a clear set of skills that need to be trained and assessed. And so I think more and more as employers start to understand that there are steps and it could lead to stackable credentials and those sorts of things. And like I said, hopefully universities get onto that. So I've talked about assessments, credentials, career exploration. Some of this project-based learning and learn to earn is very interesting. Looking forward, I think there could be some breakthrough business models in that that are coming. Getting the employers to unlock real skills-based hiring. I think AI will help finalize a taxonomy that more people can get behind and translate across different definitions of skills that we've all been waiting for. And so it could create a regime. And we made one investment in a company called Sensia. So they have 1 trillion data points on human capital in the US, and then they've integrated with Workday, and we co-invested with Workday to then bring that intelligent mapping inside of your workforce, both in terms of your current team and in terms of people you would hire. And so, we've got a big data with AI kind of driven at the employer, all the way down to going into high schools with at-risk kids and delivering interventions that are increasingly durable skills. So that whole spectrum.
Great. Wei?
Yeah, Mark covered, we're definitely seeing a lot on the career readiness, job search side. So I'll focus more as we're developing a thesis on more frontline work. In terms of frontline, so 70-80% of the global workforce is frontline. And I think the idea that we can bring, rather than thinking about replacement of humans, bring greater productivity to empower these workers, they want to actually adopt the technology. And so we're taking a very verticalized approach at looking at from construction to manufacturing to healthcare in very specific areas and use cases, and finding solutions specific to whether AI tools that can support safety on a work construction site. On the healthcare side, interestingly enough, I think 30% of the world's data is healthcare. Think about the data you collect on devices and apps, but 97% of that data is not used. So as we think about solutions and platforms that can use that, what AI is great for is organizing data to support clinicians, providers to bring more personalized care, high quality care into healthcare is also a very specific vertical we're looking at.
Thank you, Wei. Every day when you read the news, employers are increasingly asking for skill-based hiring. One of the challenges is bridging industry partners with academic institutions. Oliver and Matt, I'd love to hear from you both. How great of a challenge is that, and how are you bridging this gap? Oliver.
Yeah, so the way that we believe we've solved the challenge is by really thinking about what the actual driver and the need from an employer's perspective is. It's talent pipeline and trying to engage with young people earlier in the pipeline. Workforce planning, looking at what skills that they need for the future. They know that they need to be engaging with young people from a much earlier age. And it's always not a recruitment outcome. And that was my point earlier, is that it has to be, from a corporate's perspective, they want to see what social impact. And that's why the reporting that we provide is so powerful for that, because they can use that as a way to report on the social impact they've generated. But then also we have solutions for those corporates which actually allow them to keep those students engaged throughout their education, and to then ultimately select the particular students from their talent pool to invite them for a internship or like a fast track for an interview. So that's how we're approaching it, is by really understanding the pain points from the corporates directly, and then what we're able to do is, once we have them on board, we can develop more learning experiences which then can be made accessible to schools and to high school students.
Great. Matt?
So for us, our perspective on skill building is that learning a skill is more a factor of motivation than it is of ability. And we're really focused on, at CareerView XR, creating those experiences that are going to explain the why to students. Why is math important? I'm just going into construction. Why is English important? I'm just going to be in healthcare, right? Being able to show authentically what those careers are like is critically important. Students want to understand the real why, and authenticity goes a long way with building trust with them and with getting them to be excited about learning. And a way that we've really been doubling down on that is by building industry partnerships. In our own state of North Dakota, we've had CareerView deployed. We started a pilot project 5 years ago. The last 2 years, we were deployed across middle and high schools through a legislative appropriation. Now we're working on building an education and industry public-private partnership where industry partners are providing access for high school and higher education. Our organization will provide access for middle school and continue producing content. And then the state is looking to come to the table with dollars to provide access for elementary schools. A big part of that is not just the creation and distribution of the content, but the partnerships that form out of the activity of all of that happening. So we're seeing some really good success in our home state, and we're working to replicate that on a national level. We actually, just a couple weeks ago, launched our first partnership with a national association, the National Society of Professional Surveyors. We took on the expense of creating a professional surveyor experience, which is important because when students are asked if they want to be a surveyor, they're like, well, no, I don't want to be walking around with a paper and pen and asking people questions they don't understand. They haven't experienced it, they haven't seen it, so they don't know. And they will never choose an experience that they've never been exposed to. So with NSPS, our goal is to create an experience that they can use across all 50 states with their career fairs and outreach, and that we can create direct connections between not just the state associations or surveyors, but engineering firms and schools, and reach the ultimate goal of our platform and the content we provide being self-sustained, because industry is getting the value out of helping build that pipeline.
Great, Matt. When you guys think of intentional post-secondary pathways, so much of what people are talking about is micro-credentialing. A lot of work-based learning is what SpringPod does. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think from a corporate, because for me, work-based learning is, you have to have industry and employers part of it. It's got to have value for them. Another way that we look at it is Airbus. I was very familiar with them. They have around 20,000 applications every single year for one of their programs, and currently those students all look exactly the same in terms of a CV and their profile. Whereas how they're working with us is to put in place projects and activities that the students can go through, where they can then identify students with potential from their talent pool with us. So that's another mechanism of how work-based learning and project-based learning can be used back to the skills-based hiring model. And it's down to the fact that so many young people are coming out with exactly the same degrees and credentials already. How can it be changed and slightly different? The other benefit for a work-based learning project with the likes of Airbus is that even if students don't get selected for a role at that company, they can also walk away with a certificate from Airbus, which they could then go and apply at Boeing, and they can see that they've worked on that work-based learning project. So it's really transferable and helps them build their profile to really help them stand out from other students that are applying at the same time.
Thank you. Matt, anything on the micro-credentialing side?
Well, nothing currently, but one thing that we're really looking at is this concept of career literacy and making sure that that students are really understanding what an industry is, and they can talk about that industry in their own words and understand what it's all about, so that they can help self-identify, can I see myself going down this path? So we've been toying with the idea of creating some career literacy micro-credentials aligned with career clusters. We're very early on that, so we're very open to any suggestions folks have on that front. But that's really important. But I think that the credentialing piece that extends beyond students as well. Parents and career counselors, for instance. Parents are such a huge role. They play such a huge role in students deciding that pathway that they're going to go down. We want to make sure that they're not necessarily credentialed, but they're aware of what the industries are and they have an authentic representation. For our career counselors, we've tasked them with an enormous job. They are supposed to guide these students into the right pathway. And they've been equipped with a teaching degree, some student teaching. In rural communities, they've been tossed into an entry-level role, and they've said, guess what, now you're the career counselor too, because it's the hot potato at the school. And our students deserve more than that, and it's been that way because there has not been a really calculated move toward how do we make sure that career counselors as well are really up to speed. And that's something that we're working to. We want to make sure that the educators and the career advisors, career counselors are informed enough that they can make sure those students are also career literate.
Thank you, Matt. Wei, anything on the micro-credentialing?
No, I don't think I have anything now.
Okay, Mark? Okay. When you all think about the predictions for the market in 2025, I'd love to hear from the investor side, Mark and Wei, what your predictions are, and from the technology and access side, Oliver and Matt, what your predictions are. Mark, you go first.
So the stock market is going to go up and it's going to go down. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. We can bet on that. Predictions for... trying to be inspiring. It's going to be tough. We've had a couple years of post-COVID headwinds, and I think that's going to continue in the current environment of uncertainty. So, I think the good news is the highest ROI, measurable improvements in student outcome deals will get funded, and everything else is going to be tough. And those same companies will get adopted by limited K-12 budgets and higher education institutions with declining enrollment and state budgets that are losing federal funding. So... the bad news is, so we have, we have plenty of capital to deploy. There's a bunch of dry powder out there for entrepreneurs. It'll continue to have really high bars. I would recommend as much third-party efficacy as possible. So the new environment will have less regulations. There'll be more choice available at K-12, more innovative models. I think there might be some short-term Pell that could be really exciting. Increased focus on workforce. I think some of the budget priorities could change. maybe there's a weird opportunity to have a little bit of a incentives for employers to lean in and to build a culture like you have in the UK that's a little more embracing of the workforce and some job training. In the state of Maryland, we have a $2 billion budget for college subsidies, and we have a $200 million budget for workforce training. We have some legislators really working to flip that. And we have a new program in all the schools where you can do a second year of driver's ed and you get a commercial driver's license, right? Things like that are moving. And a recognition that only 85 kids out of 100 graduate high school. So let's address those 15 kids. Only 56 of those kids enroll in college. Only 40 of those kids persist in college, and only 28 graduate, and only 15 get a job that requires a BA. And the more conversations we have like this, and in a, we live in ground zero in Maryland of NIH and CDC and USAID, so it's been a tough world, but there are some opportunities, I think, for some change. And maybe the chaos will result in some out-of-the-box thinking that serves the kids, so I'm hopeful.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Oliver?
Yeah, so I guess for me, it's that work-based learning is here to stay. I think the way that it's gonna, my prediction really would be that there's not ever going to be enough in-person work-based learning opportunities with employers. It's an impossible task, always a supply and demand issue. So there's going to be more hybrid models that pop up. The way that those hybrid models will work is by the solution providers that can really demonstrate the impacts to these employers. Business impacts being from a social impact perspective, but also from a recruitment perspective as well. So I think it's basically the solution providers that win have to really demonstrate the value to the employers. Otherwise, they're not going to continue to invest into work-based learning, which is then going to have a greater impact on the young people.
Great. Thanks, Oliver. Matt?
Yeah, I think for us, really, the path to consistency, sustainability in whatever market we're in is really relying on those partnerships that we're building. That is the scalability factor for us. I know there are a lot of organizations that are saying, oh, we're gonna have to throw a lot of stuff against the wall to see what sticks. We're gonna have to expand our offerings so that we've got a lot of flexibility. We have decided as an organization, we're gonna hone in and get even more focused on the one thing that we do great, and we're gonna focus on how do we tie that in with the other amazing things that others are doing in the space. We've got a great solution that solves one very specific purpose, and we know that it can be a really great stepping stone for a lot of the other amazing work that others are doing. So that's how we're looking to weather the storm or ride the roller coaster, right, if you will.
Great. Wei?
I like when Mark goes first because he can lay out the bad news, and I can be the delusional optimist that I am. I think we're living in venture this bifurcated world of where the public markets are and where AI companies are being funded, and it's not just a Silicon Valley phenomenon. It is across. The founders are experiencing anyone building in tech. So the way we balance it, I will lead with our team is very diverse in our perspectives and how we think about education, which I think makes us make better investment decisions. So as we think about K-12, Mark alluded to the parent choice piece. This is not a red or blue state issue anymore. There are parents just very dissatisfied with the existing system. How do you support infrastructure while working with the public school system as well? And so we both invest inside and outside the systems. That goes to higher ed as well. We invest in a lot of solutions to support four-year universities, knowing very well there has to be way more options and alternatives to support what learning and building skills looks like. So the cop-out is we are very diverse in our investments and want to be super thoughtful. What I would say, I keep bringing it back to AI. It is so top of mind for me, and I talk to, I swear I think I talked to maybe 100 undergrads over the last few months, and I want them coming out optimistic because honestly, they're acquiring the tech a lot faster than me. You know, my junior associates are now rethinking our HR, our legal, and our CRM processes way faster than I. And I kind of have to encourage everyone to have the mindset of like out-hire yourself on this one. Because, you know, if you are at a progressive organization, they will find a role for you and your expertise. But, you know, it may sound slightly ageist in that it is the young users that are adopting this way faster than we are, and we should learn from them and support them and bring, you know, our more experience to that skill set. So I'm really trying to keep that kind of those kids coming out of undergrad and even high school highly optimistic about the future, because I do think while there may be, and I hesitate using the word displacement of skills in the short term, like every new technological change, electricity, internet, mobile, it unleashed a whole new set of industries that they are going to be the future talent for, not us. And so I'm actually very optimistic right now.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. What an exciting panel. Give us a panel round of applause.
Everything you do.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.